All right, I think we're live.
All right, very good.
How are you, Patrick? Thank you
I'm
for
well,
joining me today.
Virginia. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thanks for wanting to share about your podcast and your business. And I'm really excited to kind of help get the word out
Yeah.
today. Um, as you know, I am hosting a webinar coming up on the 26th, helping business owners with podcasting,
Hmm.
specifically to podcast for their business, which is what you've been doing for over a year.
Yeah.
How, not 2 years yet, right?
Not quite.
Okay.
I think we've published 80 some episodes, and we do it
Wow.
weekly, so we're getting close.
Wow. Almost 100.
I
You gotta
know.
get
Yeah.
yourself a plaque.
Yeah. I know. I know.
That's really, really awesome. Well, right off the bat, I want you to introduce yourself, tell us all about your business and how you help people, because I
Sure.
think you have some really impactful work that you do. So
Yeah.
take the floor.
Thank you. So our business is Vital Wealth, and we help entrepreneurs that have a net income over $1 million minimize their taxes, master wealth, and then ultimately at the end of the day, like live a great life. It's not about just adding more zeros to the bank account. So a lot of our clients come to us because they're frustrated by their CPA not helping with tax strategy at all. They're very reactive. At the end of the year, February, they gather all the data, they put the right numbers in the right boxes, and they tell the client how much money they owe. And the clients are really frustrated by that. So they generally come to us and say, "Hey, I'm tired of sending, $3, $4, $5 million plus to the IRS. We need a strategy," and that's where we come in and we help with that. So
Yeah.
that's high level what we do in our business. And if it's okay, I'd like to talk a little bit about how the podcast has helped us with
Of
that in
course.
general. So you made a comment about getting a plaque for 100 episodes. I think the plaque should come with like 5 episodes, maybe 10. The first
Ah,
five are the hardest ones. Like getting the
yes.
thing off the ground and going. Just figuring out simple things like the technology and making sure it's all set up and working. I think the first episode I ever tried to record took me about an hour to just make sure everything was working properly so I could, record the episode. And so,
Right.
unfortunately, I didn't know you at that time. I wish I would have. That would have made my life much simpler, much easier. But I think there's something to getting started
Hmm.
and having the right team around you when you get started that is so important, because the friction that comes from like getting the thing moving, we'll just call it inertia in general, right? Like a body in motion wants to stay in motion, and a body at rest wants to stay at rest. And so to get the thing like moving was the hardest part
Hmm.
for us. But now that it's going and we've got the systems and the processes in place, it's so much easier to just make this happen on a consistent basis. We've got a nice backlog of episodes recorded, and uh, like I was mentioning, we're in motion now, and
Yeah.
it's easier to just stay in motion. So
Makes a big difference.
yeah, I think those things are all just so key. And then I think about the business side of the equation. There's the cool thing is we have a premium service. It's expensive to engage with us, but um, we also have guarantees for our clients. We guarantee we'll save you at least 2x what you pay us in the form of tax savings. So um, the nice thing about the work we do, though, is the podcast has generated some business, which is great, direct business. It's
That's
also done
awesome.
a really nice job of we'll take prospects that for some reason don't become clients right away.
Hmm.
We'll let them know, hey, we're going to put you on our email list, and then they get the podcast episodes every single week. And we don't really do any selling through our email other than just keep them up to date with all the cool things we're talking about on the podcast. And it's been so interesting to see how that's been an asset for us. They'll respond back to those emails we send out on a weekly basis, say, hey, I'm ready. I'm ready to engage now. And So I think that just consistent content that we're putting out there is really valuable for just our clients to show and prospects to show that we're serious about the work we're doing, and it aligns with the goals and the issues that they're dealing with, and so that's good. And I think one thing to also maybe talk about is just the type of content we put out. We our goal is to serve the entrepreneur, and when we think about that, there's lots of different ways we can serve the entrepreneur. There's clearly the tax and the financial piece, but we also talk about things like mental health and fitness and all of those other pieces, because it's like, we have these complex lives, and we see our clients teetering on the edge of burnout. And it's like, look, it doesn't really matter if you have $100 million valuation for your business, but you're the rest of your life's falling apart. So we think
Yeah.
it should be both of those things. So we talk about everything from, hey, let's give you a super cool tax strategy, to let's make sure our mental, physical, emotional health is dialed in as well. So there's a lot there that we could dig into, but yeah, I think the podcast has been great for our business. Any
Yeah.
questions about any of those things?
Yeah, I want to highlight your content.
Hmm.
Like you said, it's focused on helping the entrepreneur, but you also highlight physical health, mental health, wellness overall. I know there's been some family focused episodes.
Hmm.
So, talk us through how, because this is the piece that I think a lot of people get bogged down with in the beginning is, what will I talk about? And you could think, oh, well, I have a ton of things to talk about in my
Right.
business, right? But we also are multifaceted individuals. A lot of people have multiple interests. But it's so important for your podcast content to serve a specific purpose, speak to a specific type of person.
Yep.
So, elaborate a little more on how you cover
Hmm. Yeah.
several areas of life, right?
Yeah.
But you still have this very business action focused podcast,
Yeah.
without it feeling like, what is this podcast about? This guy talks
Right.
about everything, because
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
doesn't feel that way. It
Yeah.
feels very focused.
Yeah. Thank you. So I think one of the things that um, we've done a pretty good job of is creating frameworks around our content that we deliver to the client, and
Yeah.
I'll just walk through a few of those frameworks, and then
Yeah.
it just gives us so much to talk about.
Good.
So the what we install for our clients is what we'll call the entrepreneur private office. Okay, and it has four components. It starts off with cash flow, and there's actually four different levels of cash flow planning. And then once we have their cash flow figured out, we move to tax strategy. And there's also four levels of tax strategy we can talk about. Then from there, we move to investments, right? Money I'm not sending to the IRS. Let's go invest the dollars. And you can probably guess how many levels of investment we have. We have four more levels there. Um, and then finally, we've built wealth, and now we need to protect it. And this is a trick question. We don't have four levels of planning on the protection side. We have five.
Oh,
We couldn't figure out how to get it all in there.
there's a
So,
bonus.
right, there's a bonus level. So that's really the wealth building piece. And so we start to share this framework, and then when we bring somebody into the discussion, we just talk about where they fit in that part of the framework. And so that's a key piece. And then we also, one of the most important things we talk about is the most valuable things in life aren't a big bank account. It's this concept called reach. So the R's for relationships, E's for experiences, A's for advancement or growth, C's for contribution. The scriptures tell us it's better to give than receive. And then H is our health. And we've already touched on this a little bit, but it's our
Yeah.
physical health, our mental health, and our spiritual health. And so I really can't tell where we should go with your planning until I understand what's important to you from this reach concept. And so once I'm clear on that, now we can start designing a financial strategy that's going to support all that, because we really have an unlimited number of planning opportunities. But if I know what's important to you, like if you want to impact your community and your employees and be charitable, it's like, okay, cool. We can design some strategy that helps save money on the tax side, but also accomplishes those goals. So that's really where we're trying to fit the discussion in. And another thing that is really useful early on, we were creating content talking about this, I'll say, framework. And I will say, for me, creating a solo episode where I'm not talking to anybody is so much more challenging than interviewing somebody for the show,
Yeah.
because you really got to have all your thinking sort of figured out. And it's nice to have wonderful editors like yourself to help clean up all that, rambling at times. But creating that framework and being able to talk about it for a half hour, 45 minutes, an hour, it can take some time and energy to organize all that.
Mhm.
So I think that's where we start, and getting those episodes started. That's why I think the first 5 or 10 are probably the hardest. You're figuring out a lot of the stuff. You're figuring out how to communicate well. But after you get going and you're putting content out in the world, like we get more podcast requests to be on our show than we can interview people. And so
Yeah.
we're constantly measuring those people like, okay, is this relevant to our audience? And does it fit in this framework
Mhm.
that we can sort of have an intelligent discussion? And so I think that's been awfully encouraging, and that's where the inertia sort of, if you are just willing to commit to keeping it going, and I'm
Yeah.
just so stubborn, I'm like, I if nobody listens, I don't care. I'm going to just keep producing this thing to get it out in the world. And so those have been just so helpful for us on the content side. A, have the framework, and then B, just keep it going,
Mhm.
because then you start running across people. Like we get new introductions all the time just from our clients, and I'm like, this is a super interesting topic. Like, for example, we got introduced to a guy that helps businesses create a board. It's an informal board, but it's like, hey, if you need people to help you, like that have been there, done that,
Mhm.
give you advice on your business because it can be lonely. I'm like, this is an amazing topic. We need to have you on the podcast. And so,
Yeah.
anytime I always have my radar up for unique guests that are doing cool things that serve our entrepreneur. We get those folks plugged into the show pretty quickly. So
Yeah, I love that. So, without meaning to, you shared how you're using your podcast to position you as the expert in
mhm,
your space, which is something that's highly searched. Like, how do I use my content? Like, how do I do this expert positioning?
mhm,
And that is how you're doing it, is by being careful about the topics, having your framework, having your topics fit in that framework,
yeah,
and then creating your content around it, whether it is interviews or solo episodes. And then all the while, you're really focused on speaking to and helping these high net worth clients. And so that is how you're doing that, because you've recognized the value, like you said, of even if no one listens, which is not what's happening,
mhm, right,
you are determined to share this content because you find it valuable. You know other business owners
mhm,
who've been in your shoes or who are in your shoes, or are working their way up,
mhm,
will find it valuable as
yeah,
well. So I want to help you rewind way
yep,
back to the beginning real
yeah,
quick.
okay,
And I remember getting some of your very early recordings where you are trying to, get a sentence out, and you get tongue tied and you get so frustrated with yourself. I could see it on your face. And I was like, this is post recording. So I'm
mhm,
watching it. You're not there with me. And I'm like, it's okay, man. Like, just try it again.
yeah,
But like you said, those first 5 or 10 episodes, even solo episodes, they can be really challenging to some people because there's no one to really interact with. And we are so used to seeing and consuming this,
mhm,
crafted content that
yep,
has been edited,
yeah,
FYI, even if you can't see the edits.
yeah, yep,
Some of your favorite people that you follow definitely edit, or they're very, very practiced.
mhm,
Um, so when we start our own show, we think we should be just smooth is butter, and
Right.
we're not.
Yeah.
So, share a little bit about that and really the growth and transition. I mean, I even remember talking about like what color shirt you should wear
Hmm.
and just the things that we get hung up on early on in our journey. And, you know, share a little bit more about maybe some tips or some things that helped you get through that hard part.
Yeah.
And then what's the difference of how it feels now?
Yeah, that's good. So I think the cool thing is I'm still learning. There's still
Hmm.
things that I'm like, man, I could be doing that better. And I listen to all the shows after they're published to
Yeah.
just because I record it and then I'm done, which is really a beautiful part for me because I've got enough going on. And so I always like to just I'll say turn it on and just hear how it all came out. And
Yeah.
oftentimes in the discussion, I'm tuned into where I think it's going to go, and I'm not doing a great job listening to, all of the details, which is okay because I'm trying to be an intentional host and
Yes.
get the most out of it for our clients. But I think early on, I want to give people permission and have it be okay. And if you go back and you look at anybody from like Mr. Beast to some of the podcasts you listen to, go back to the beginning, and they're not very good, or they're not near as good as they
Yeah.
are currently. And the cool thing is nobody's really paying attention anyway.
Hmm.
You're still getting it all going. You're still building that audience, and there is no drive-through breakthrough. I'm sure there's some people that just pop off and they've got tens of thousands of downloads real early because they hit on a great topic. But in general, it's this. It's like going to the gym, right?
Yeah.
The first week I go to the gym, I don't look in the mirror and see the results, right? But I can look back a year later and go, wow, okay, I've made a lot of progress. And so
Hmm.
podcast is very much the same way. And I think the um, approaching it as a learner, I think is important because like I'm not going to have the perfect first episode. And if I wait for that, and to be honest, that was me. I talked about putting the podcast out probably 2 years before I actually hit record on my first, episode. And it's like, man, that's frustrating. And I had a friend, and this was so useful. We didn't even use the episode. He was like, I'm coming to your office and we're recording an episode.
Oh.
I'm like, all right, fine. So I like had to have all the stuff and we got it together and it was garbage and we never used it. But it's the thing that got it started.
Yeah. He
um,
helped push you along.
it did,
Yeah.
and I think one of the things that I do now that's just really useful, and I'm interviewing people on the podcast. I don't do too many solo episodes anymore, but I use Donald Miller's story brand.
Hmm.
I use the brand script and like I have them printed out and on my desk. And so like when I'm ready to do an interview, I get one of those out and I think about, okay, who is the listener? And I start filling that piece out. What do they want? What are their problems? Then I'm positioning the person I'm interviewing as the expert to solve those problems, who has a plan. And then we've got a call to action, like, okay, how are we going to fix this problem? And
Right.
then here's what success looks like, and here's what failure looks like. And it's like having that framework was also super useful for me to be able to like put together a conversation versus just sort of talking about,
Yeah.
random stuff.
And just
So,
asking questions that come to your
yeah.
mind. You had a more of a direction specifically with that guest and with
Mhm.
your listeners in mind.
Yeah, yep.
I
So
love
that
that.
that's been awfully helpful to just have that sort of tool,
Hmm.
because there were times where I was just chatting and I would have them tell me, but if they didn't have like uh, if I didn't do a good job identifying the problems, it's kind of hard to connect why this person's important. Why are we listening to this person talk?
Mm.
And so I always just like that as a framework, and I think that's something that almost anybody can use to really have a productive conversation. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, and then I think there's just so much value in having somebody helping you edit your podcast. You can sound terrible. And you can go through and help clean it up, which makes
Mhm.
all the difference in the world. And then you can give me feedback on
Mhm.
things that, like, hey, um, because I think we think we're more when we first listen to ourselves, we sound awfully dry, and it's like you've got to bring some energy to this thing, we got to like get it going. And so I that's something that I've done. And I also record my intros and outros after the fact. And if I
Mhm.
have like a sometimes I'll have like a call to action in the middle that ties into the conversation we have. So those are awfully useful too to do after the recording, because then I can sort of prime the discussion. um, and it doesn't take very long, and I think that's kind of a nice sort of piece to do as well, and it can sort of set the tone for the episode. And if I do re-record anything, it's those. I'm doing
Yeah.
2 or 3 takes of that. And I'm like, I I was half dead when I recorded that first one. What was wrong with me? Like, bring the energy here. Make this exciting. So, I
Yeah.
I think those things help too.
Yeah. Well, thank you for highlighting the editing field.
Yeah.
Um, I do think we are working magic behind the scenes much
Hmm.
of the time. Because if you think about it, like our absolute job is to make our clients look good, sound
Hmm.
good, feel good, and improve their show over time. So, like you said, so often do we misjudge ourselves in our own recordings? Either I thought I was like too energetic and a little over the top, or maybe I was half dead,
Hmm.
or I jabbered on too much, or whatever. So either we're judging ourselves too harshly, or we're not judging ourselves enough.
Yeah.
We don't know where the bar is,
Right.
right? And so when you have just any third party, whether it is your editor or a manager, producer, somebody, maybe it's the person that writes your show notes, someone else in that podcast space with you that can anything from help you find topics to help you find guests to give
Yeah.
you feedback to help improve the show over time. And that goes back to what you
Hmm.
talked about earlier. It may not be wonderful from the very beginning, but we can incrementally improve and end up with something that's shockingly better
Right.
by 20 episodes, 50 episodes, 80 episodes.
Yeah.
So, and you always did a great job of being receptive to feedback and trying to make those adjustments.
Yeah.
So I want to commend
Thank you.
you
Yeah.
there. Will you talk a little bit about, you mentioned email
Hmm.
earlier.
Yeah.
There is quite the disconnect between, I'm a business owner and I want clients and I've got the podcast, but how do I get those listeners to become clients? And
Hmm.
really, email is the bridge.
Yeah.
So, is there anything
Yeah.
else that you've done either with the email, with
Hmm.
sharing episodes in like the back end of the business that has really helped
Yeah.
them come in?
Yeah. And I think so we really try to drive people to email, because
Mm-hmm.
email is the channel that um, we can control.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, Apple, iTunes, or Spotify could change the algorithm, and I don't get as much exposure. YouTube could change the deal.
Yeah.
Whatever social platform, like, they can change it. So, and when we go to things like FinCon, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is, where finance and media meet, right? Every speaker, even if they're like a TikTok host wizard, on how to build your TikTok audience, they're like,
Yes.
drive people to email because you
Mm-hmm.
can control it. So I think email is absolutely um, that's the thing we're trying to build. I love my podcast listeners. Like, I think it's how we build, I'll say, relationship without me having to
Yes.
talk to people.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm trying to get people to my email list. Um, and then the email list is sort of the front door where people like come meet us. We have free resources that we give people to download. So, because one of the reasons we started the podcast was like, let's add value to people as they're on this growth curve to $1 million of take-home income. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and let's catch people and add value to their situation when they're at 250,000 a take home, half million, 600, on their way up to that million. And let's provide value all along the way. And so we've created free resources for people to go download. It gets them in our email sort of pipeline. And we don't, I could do a better job of this. I could do a better job selling through my email, but we just keep people sort of up to date on the content we're producing, and it does a pretty nice job keeping people engaged with us on um, as prospects, and they just eventually raise their own hand and say, "Hey, I'm ready now for the next step." And I think
Yeah.
maybe something to piggyback on this. So I am a podcast listener. I listen to podcasts. I don't I don't watch YouTube. Like, I don't. But we have more subscribers on our YouTube page than we do the podcast. And that shocks me a little bit just because that's not the world I live in. But I think having, turning on your video and putting it on all over the world, everywhere you can get it, even if there's nothing visually compelling about our podcast, like it's just me standing in front of this microphone, same thing with the person on the other end. I think that's also an important piece, and all of that drives to our email list is where I'm trying to send people. So
Mm-hmm.
that's how we're using it, and it's working well for us. It's paying for itself, which is the goal. So yeah.
That is awesome. I'm really, really happy to hear that. Would you just real quickly share maybe a little bit about what you've seen along your journey? Like, do you remember what episode you were on or anything at these different milestones? Maybe anything that stood out with you for you was you got your first reply back or your
Yeah.
first client or you hit
Yep.
1,000 listens or any of those milestones that you remember, like what episode you were on or anything along the way?
Yeah. So I think this might answer your question, but it's a roundabout way.
Roundabout.
So
That's okay.
the my encouragement is to be okay standing out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I'll give you an example of that and how it's paid off. So for me, we publish every Tuesday. Okay, Christmas Eve was a Tuesday. So one of the things I talked about in that reach conversation was our health, and a key component of that is our spiritual health. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to do a solo episode on, um, I'll say my faith and why I think um, a conversation about Jesus is important. Okay, and so I just walked through my sort of experience there. Why, I'm going to say I'm going to give evidence for why uh, Jesus is sort of Lord and Savior, and that matters. Okay, and so like that stands out, and I could see people being concerned about, okay, do I really want to put that out in the world? Because somebody's going to look at that and go, hey, no, thank you. So that episode has been um, it's the one that's most referenced by people that comment on the podcast. They'll like go
Okay.
listen, and then they hear one episode. Like I had this guy found us for a very niche topic, and then he went back and he was like, then I listened to your Jesus episode, and it was
And he
great.
called it
I
that.
knew I had to like reach out because we were just so aligned on so many things. And then I had a client that is one of my favorite people. But I had no idea. We'd never really gone deep on the faith side of things. And he referred business to one of his best friends, and he sent him the Christmas Eve episode. And he was like, this guy's a finance guy, but you'll get an idea of his thinking listening to this episode. And so I think if anything, that's an encouragement is don't be beige.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody gets excited about the color beige. Be fuchsia, be red, be blue, be something that people can go, yes, I like that, or no, I don't. And
Yeah.
and I think that I'll say episode on my faith was one of those like important episodes that people are now like sort of pointing to, going, hey, this
Mm-hmm.
means something to me. I can resonate with that, and it's been good for business too, which I think I was a little concerned about. I actually wasn't so much. I was just like, this has the potential to turn people off, but I'm okay with that. I'm
Mm-hmm.
okay with people going, yes, I want to engage with you, or no, I don't, and I want people to understand who I am and how I think. And um, I think that was an important episode, and just gave me the confidence to be like, okay, cool. It is okay to be 100% authentic with who I am and put that
Mm-hmm.
out in the world. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if that answers your question. I can give it another go, but I think that is an important piece people need to be
Yeah.
aware of too. So
I agree. I think so many people, especially when you start out with anything, right? Like think of when Facebook first started. You were like
mhm,
afraid, like, what should I post? Like, I don't want people to think this or that about me or whatever.
mhm,
But even with your podcast, the faster you can almost force yourself to be authentically you and talk about things that you are truly, truly passionate about, they can hear that. Even
mhm.
if you're doing an audio only show and they cannot see you, they can hear that passion in your voice, whatever the topic is. If you're, say you're a business owner, but you're passionate about dogs. I mean, I don't know, whatever.
Sure,
Go nuts. Have
absolutely,
fun.
yeah,
Loop it back to how it applies to your business.
yep,
And that's going to be a really, really important piece.
yeah,
I want to give you a moment here, real quick, because we are running out of time.
yep, yep,
I'm sure you have appointments lined up all day. So, is there anything that if your ideal client is out there, they
mhm,
catch this live, they're thinking, "Well, I'm a high income earner, I'm an
yep,
entrepreneur, this guy is great." What is a tax saving option that they
yeah,
could be focusing on or thinking about this summer? And of
yep,
course, they need to call you. We're not giving
yeah,
tax
yeah,
advice
yeah,
here,
yeah,
but just conceptually, mid year,
yep,
what is something someone should be thinking about?
yeah. This is great. So I think there's, going back to my levels. I think
Yes.
there's level one strategies that are straight down the middle of the fairway. The IRS gives us guidance, but it doesn't take any investment. And I think these are things that um, we've got some free resources. If somebody wants to go check it out, they can go to
Yes.
vitalstrategies.com/tax, and we'll send you all of the free resources on the level one stuff. But the maximizing the home office deduction, okay? Now the IRS lets us deduct $1,500. Our clients that are making over $1 million live in nice homes. The
Yeah.
expense to run their home is more than they can. They might be able to get an additional $2,000 or $3,000 worth of deduction. Okay, now that translates to $1,000 of tax savings. It's not anything. $1,000. It's like, oh, it's $1,000 out of my, $400,000 tax bill.
Yeah.
But it might have taken you 30 minutes to put it together. That's $2,000 an hour type work. Okay, that's a good one. The next one is called the Augusta Rule.
Mm-hmm.
The Augusta Rule is where you can use your home for 14 days as a rental. Okay, it's from Augusta, Georgia, where the Masters is held, and people rent out their houses to media celebrities and golf pros and that type of thing. And they don't have to claim it as income, and they make a ton of money. So
Mm-hmm.
you can rent your house out to your business for 14 days. I don't really want you putting it on Airbnb and having a stranger there, but if I have a business meeting in my house, I can rent that property out. Um, and I'm moving money from my right pocket to my left, creating a tax deduction, but it's not income to me, which is
Yeah.
we think great. Now you have to do this well. We have to document everything. We have to do needs to be ordinary and necessary, meaning like it was in the ordinary course of business. It was also an ordinary cost, right? And so we
Mm-hmm.
use Airbnb comparables. We got the whole checklist, but between those two strategies, you might find 30 grand of deductions, which might save you $10,000, $15,000 of income tax,
Yeah.
which is real money. So
Yeah.
we think those things should be good. And then the final one is like, I have three daughters. We are in a 15,000 square foot office building. They're teenagers. They clean it for me, and I pay them. You can pay your kids $15,000 a year each, and they don't pay any tax on that, income tax on that. So
Mm-hmm.
there are some things you need to do properly there, but again, we've got the checklist. But I'm paying $15,000 a year for my teenagers for different things. You know, they're driving my vehicles and all these other things. So if I can move it from a high top tax bracket down into the 0% tax bracket, teach my kids some responsibility, we think those are all fantastic opportunities. And all those things we talked about, there might be $20,000 of tax savings right there that you know you can take advantage of. So
Yeah.
that's what I think people should be looking out for. Like, put your kids to work. You know, they need a W-2, but it's a great way to go, and there's some real nice tax savings there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I love it. Those are definitely things that all of us could be, should be taking advantage of. And so I just want to kind of put a plug here for
Yeah.
Patrick. Definitely go check out vitalstrategies.com. There's a tools section, there's a big free resources button,
Hmm.
various PDFs that you can download that walk you through some of what he just talked about, but also some other really useful tax tips. And just thank you, Patrick, for
Yeah.
being open to sharing about your podcast, your business, all the things. I really appreciate
Yeah.
you.
Thank you, Virginia. And we're just big believers in who, not how, right? Like, I don't need to figure out how to do things. I need to bring a who into my life to figure those things out. And you're a great who. If somebody's going to do a podcast, they should just call you and get started from scratch versus trying to figure out how to do it on their own. So,
Yeah.
uh, thank you so much for being a valuable part of our podcast journey. It's been really good.
Yeah,
So,
thank you. And I loved being part of it,
mhm.
always cheering you on and um, looking forward to continuing to see episodes published. I get a kick out of it every week when I
Wonderful.
see that email come out with your podcast episodes. So just keep it up and thank you so much.
Thanks, Virginia.
All
Take care.
right. Take care, Patrick.
Bye bye.
Bye.